Hi, I'm Paul Antonio, and in this video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my PAScribe geometric Textualis Quadrata. Now, lots of people have asked me, why do I call it a PAScribe geometric Textualis Quadrata? The first thing about this Textualis Quadrata is it is not an historical script. So this is a geometric construct which I developed in order to teach students a foundation and framework onto which they can graft historical textualist scripts. The reason for this is when I was learning textualis, when I was teaching myself, I found that there were so many variables that I couldn't really accommodate all of the variables. And so I decided to strip back the script to three basic strokes: a quadrant, a lozenge, and a downstroke. Now, the downstroke can be a very short, a short, or a long downstroke. I just call it a short down or a long down. By putting these parts together using this geometric framework, it really helps you to consolidate your understanding of the script, and it gives you a brilliant platform for building historical understanding of the script. So in this video, I'm going to run through how my framework works and how some of the other historical scripts work. So here we see this Textualis Quadrata. It's very geometric. It's very rigid, except of course for the L and the I and the D and the R and the T, where we have a little bit of play. So my Textualis is this one. This is a semi-quadrata. This is also a semi-quadrata, but this has a slight curve to it, and this has an angle to it. So let's have a look at those in a little bit more detail. And then this is an historical Textualis Quadrata, and these are slightly more adjusted ones. And I've put this in to show you what happens when you put these lines in. Now, my Textualis is a little bit different because unlike historical Textualis, what happens is, so in my Textualis, we have a quadrant, and with that quadrant, I put the nib back inside of the middle of the quadrant. Now it's slightly different with the lozenge. Here we see you come out and you basically go around and down. Here we come across and stop and go straight down. Hence the difference is there's a curve here and there's a straight edge there. And in the historical Textualis, you'll find that the downstroke is placed about here. So you still have a tiny shoulder, whereas in semi-quadrata, there is no shoulder, and in my geometric Textualis, there's a massive shoulder. Now, of course, once we move to the other Textualis variation, so this is just one of the variations, we have a downstroke, we have a quadrant, and a line. So you can, most textualists would put the downstroke here, and then the next quadrant would go here. Now, the problem with this is sometimes the line is not long enough, sometimes it's too long, sometimes what happens with the line is that. So once we start adding other angles to it, the line has a tendency to go above the x height. It can destabilize the script. So my Textualis is different in that it's just the quadrant, the lozenge, and the downstroke. It's very geometric. It gives you a brilliant framework. Now, whilst I'm talking about this, you probably recognize that I'm using the word textualis as opposed to textura. So textura generally refers to the family of scripts which create the textualis scripts. So we have, of course, we have Textualis Quadrata, Prescissus, and they also the word textura also refers to the fact that letters in this family, these black letter scripts, which include Rotunda, Fraktur, Schwabacher, all of these scripts belong to the black letter family. They also belong to the Gothic scripts family, and they also belong to the Textura family. The species of the script is Textualis Quadrata. So I hope that sort of clears up a question that lots of you have been asking me. Why do I use the word textualis? So from here on in, the development of the script of my geometric script, my geometric Textualis Quadrata, uses this, this series of positioning where you fit the downstroke into the center of the quadrant and you make a downstroke. Similarly, you do the same thing at the base, and of course, you do this at when you come to writing with another letter, when you come to creating an M or an N, you move from a quadrant to a lozenge. Now, I call these quadrants because to me they are quadrants, because of course in Arabic they use a diamond shape, a similar shape, but it is much narrower. So you can see that looks very much like this. So in Arabic, we see that kind of shape. Obviously, this is not the right tool for it. A little bit. Whereas the quadrant is like so, and the lozenge is longer. The reason for this is simple, because if you use a quadrant and a downstroke and a quadrant, and you use a quadrant, a downstroke, and a quadrant, you have no idea if that is an N or an A, or two eyes touching each other. So I use a quadrant, a downstroke, and a quadrant, and I tangentially touch the corners to use a lozenge and a downstroke and a quadrant, which gives me roughly the same width of a nib stroke, a downstroke in that space. If I turn the nib horizontally, you'll see that it is the full width of the nib. Of course, when it comes to writing some variations of Textualis, you will find that by doing this, there is a little bit more irregularity in the placement. Now, I understand that lots of people prefer to do this, use the little line. When I teach my students, I use my quadrata because I find it gives a much deeper understanding of a framework. And once you understand where the quadrants sit and where the lozenge and the downstrokes sit, you can then start adding the augmentations like the little line or applying a little bit of pressure. Now, I'm going to show you a very playful Textualis, which is really quite fun. So I'm going to use a series of tools. The first tool is the quill. So I cut this quill this week. So we can do a quadrant. See that little curved shape there? You see that in a manuscript. Know that this script was written with a quill. Only a quill does that. And let's get that quadrant correct. And we can press and release and press and make a quadrant there. We have a little bit of emphasis or wasting in the shape where the downstroke does very much like a bone. Now, there are lots of ways that you can play with Textualis. You can write with a carpenter's pencil. And you can clearly see me using my Textualis here because I am in the middle of that shape there. Of course, with the lozenge, you're not in the center, you're actually at the bottom third. And of course, if you really want to sit and understand the script, it's always good to do some double pencil practice. Now, the great thing about this is if we fill this in, what it does is it shows you exactly where those points line up. Now, of course, it's a little bit more difficult trying to do this kind of double pencil work because you're missing some of the enclosing lines. You tend to just see a set of double lined shapes, which can be a little bit confusing. So I hope that's helped you to understand a little bit about my geometric Textualis and why it works the way it works and how it works in relation to the historical forms of the script. Of course, I've not even scratched the surface of the variations of Textualis hands that we have historically.